Welcome to Interesting Enough. He is Trey. I am Nolan. Thank you guys so much for joining us once again. This is your first time listening to the podcast. Again, thank you. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. Trey, man, what is going on? How you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling good, man. The sports, like, is we almost in the dog days of sports, but like we've been having some really good stories here recently.
Yeah, man. I mean, what did we just record the finals preview? Then we were like, we got to jump on here to talk about all this WNBA. Like the WNBA stuff got so out of control that we were like, we have to just now get on the podcast to talk about this. We've been talking about it so much off of the podcast. I'm like, we might as well just hit record and talk about it. So we haven't done this. We'll do this as our open shop episode, which I was looking, Trey. The last time we did an open shop was at the end of March. And
Mm.
that was when I think it was March 27th, the date. And that was when we discussed something else. But the main thing I remember from that date is Kendrick dropped the Like That verse. So that's the last time we actually did like an open shop or open discussion about something non-sports per se. And if we go back and listen to that podcast at the time, we didn't even know what Kendrick really had in the bag besides the Like That. We were just talking about that one verse. And it was a whole atomic bomb he had going on as well. But for now, we're gonna talk about the WNBA stuff and get into the conversation, the rhetoric, because some of it is bothering us how it's going. But Trey, you got a little article that you wanted to bring up first, so let's do that.
Yeah, okay. So I read it today in the New York Post, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. That's it.
Mhm.
So keep it really short and sweet. There's a remote village in the Amazon rainforest, and I'm not really tech savvy, but I'll try to explain it the best I can. That Elon Musk, I'm sorry, he has something called Starlink, and it uses satellites where you can get internet pretty much anywhere in the world. And he helped this village in the Amazon get internet, but unfortunately, it's caused the village a lot of problems because now they said all the teens and everybody's addicted to porn and social media. So I just wanted to see what you thought about this.
Wait, so if I get this straight in layman's terms, he basically gave internet to a place that didn't even know what internet was, I guess, at some point, and then yeah, honestly, this sounds exactly about right. Because what that village is experiencing is basically what all of us that know the internet is. If you look at everybody's like what's going on, porn gonna be at the top of the list for most people. Like it's gonna be at the top of the list, and of course the addiction to social media. I mean, we're on social media all the time. So like honestly, I'm not. It sounds funny, but it's actually appropriate because what else would be more popular than those two things? Like that's most accessible. Because I'm assuming. I guess the interesting thing would be I would want to know, and you probably don't even have this follow up. What the village people like were they aware of the internet, and did they just didn't have internet, or like what? Like that would be what I would want to know, because like who would know like where to go to start this thing? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. I don't have that for you, but that is honestly a great question.
Because that changes it. Because like if you say they didn't even know anything about the internet, which it's even if you didn't have the internet, I feel like that'd almost be impossible. Because like wouldn't just like word of mouth get around that like people are doing something even if you have no idea what it's about. But again, you said it's in a village in nowhere. So if they let's go with the scenario, if they didn't know, that'd be insane that they got the porn on social media. So I'm gonna just venture to say that they did know, because maybe people in their village have traveled before to other places and have heard about this thing. And if they did know, whoever the first person in that village was, the first thing that they did is go to porn. They different. I'm gonna just put that. I'm gonna just
Hey,
put it out
you
there. They
know
different.
everybody was around it. Damn, you looking at that? Where did you find that?
Yeah, exactly. So I just like I would find that hard to believe they just like, oh, we've never used the internet before and we just stumbled onto that randomly. I'm like, oh, really? You just stumbled onto a porn website? Really? This is the first
Here's
first
my
thing.
thought. Here's my thought. They hadn't used the internet before, but they went on something like Twitter, and then we know like Twitter is pretty much like I don't know
Yeah,
if
you
you
get
have a
it
Twitter, but
anywhere.
like you see that, yeah. So then I'm thinking like maybe this is something like they just open the door for 'em.
Yeah,
That's just my guess theory.
to, to be real, that's a great point. Porn in 2024 is really broad. it's broad in terms of like what is categorized as porn and where you can get porn. Because like you said, this isn't like the old days where you just gotta like, well, old days, you got to get tapes and stuff, right? Magazines. Now
Yeah, you
you
got
got
to
to
be
get
real
the
nasty in the old day. Like you just real nasty. You doing all that.
right, right. But then, but even like if we were growing up, right? Like I guess you have to go on specific sites and stuff like that. Like you said, you could just be scrolling on Twitter one day or on Facebook or whatever, and it could be porn. Like so, it's like you
Yep.
could honestly like just not even be looking for this, and then it pops up. That being said, somebody was looking for it. Somebody in that damn village is looking for it. I don't know. Somebody in that village is looking for it. They ain't just crack open Twitter. That's the first thing that was on the feed. I'm sorry. Unless they had a previous algorithm from somebody else in the village that had an iPhone we didn't know about. But that's actually really really hilarious though. But no, I like that story. I actually want to see more about that article though, because I want to see more. I'm interested in like how he got the internet to that village. I know you said not the most tech savvy in the world, but I'm actually curious about that part too. So that's really cool. Let's get to the business at hand, and let's talk about the WNBA. And we wanted to hop on here because essentially for the last 24 to 48 hours, I've heard nothing on social media but a bunch of people that have not watched these WNBA games talk about what is going on in the WNBA and how we're taking all these cheap shots at Caitlin Clark. Obviously, how I'm setting this up, I'm very skewed. So I'm gonna let Trey, you go first and take this in any direction. But to fill it in before Trey, actually before you even go, as we're recording this, this is what are we on? This is Tuesday night. The Sky are actually playing the Liberty. As I said, Trey, the Sky are my self-proclaimed team. I picked them this year. Kind of like the squad. I was telling you about that. I'm coming around to the squad. The Angel Reese, Cardoso's back. It makes the squad a lot better. They're a lot more physical. They actually have a real legitimate number one scoring option. And Kennedy Carter, who's been subject to a bunch of scrutiny, got a nice little applause going to the score table before she got into the game. So that's like the current update of what's going. Yeah, that's kind of the current update of what's going on. And by the way, as we're recording this, she's got 16 points and she's like the leading scorer right now. So they are losing the game by 12 with 5 minutes left. So it looks like they're gonna not finish it off. But from the first half, she was hooping. So I got to give her credit on that end. But I got a lot of thoughts on how this conversation went. I saw the Stephen A. and Monica McNett conversation I've heard what Barkley said previously. But you go in any direction you want, Trey, and then I'll just kind of piggyback off of that.
Okay, so I think what I really want to say the most is just that I think that we're blowing this way, way out of proportion. And by when I say we, I'm just talking about a lot of people again that you state probably have never even watched a WNBA game, let alone watch that particular game. All they're seeing is that 10-second clip on Twitter, social media, where Caitlin Clark's getting pushed down. Now, again, the play was it kind of dirty. I don't know if I would use dirty, but it was reckless. Like it was just a bad play. I'm not going to defend Carter for making that play. Like she was there to push her down, like with no real intention of making a play in the basketball. I don't even think the ball had been inbounded when she made that play. But what I
Right.
will say is we've all played basketball before, or any kind of sport. We play football, baseball yourself. Like we know that tempers run high, and at certain points you might get a little too physical. You might accidentally push somebody. Like it happens. Was that a play that was going to actually injure Caitlin Clark? No. Was that a play that's going to be detrimental to her career? No. I mean, for crying out loud, the day later, Carter, she was assessed I mean, not a technical, she was assessed a flagrant one for the play a day later. So it wasn't even like, she didn't get a slap in the wrist. Like there were real consequences. But I do think that it kind of led to one of our bigger issues in society right now. You really talk about American society where it's like, hey, this is a very prominent white girl that's young lady, I should say, that's in the WNBA, where it's predominantly, I would say, black women. And a lot of people feel that she's being attacked or being singled out just for being a very good basketball player and being white. Like they feel like she's being mistreated. I don't agree with that sentiment, but I know that's a lot of sentiment that a lot of people have and share. And I think this one incident they can use to kind of bolster that point.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And I think the race element is something that is obviously not talked about too much because I think people gotta kind of tiptoe around it, especially when you're on network television.
Which
So I
I don't
get why
blame
that
them.
has I get why that hasn't been addressed. But it is a part of it, right? It is a part of they're wanting to make Caitlin Clark not only the hero because she's been great for the game, which is universally understood, but she's basically been considered America's sweetheart. And when we say America's sweetheart, that lends to us to believe who is, claiming her to be a sweetheart. But that's a different story for a different day. I want to go to the little bit of a different angle and just take this walk with me. So this conversation has gotten so out of hand, like you said, and my number one complaint about it, among many other complaints, is who's actually watching these games. And the reason I say that is I've watched every Fever game this year, Trey. Every Fever game. So I wouldn't be just saying this just to say this. Every Fever game, not every single minute of every game, but I've seen beginning, middle, and end of every single game. And some games I've watched the entire game. So I say all that to say Caitlin Clark is being fouled. You know what's happening though? And my issue with it is no one's talking about, or everyone's talking about Caitlin Clark with the cheap shot. And no one's talking about Alyssa Thomas dragging Angel Reese multiple times and getting a flagrant foul and bringing her to the ground, right? And I'm not trying to pit Caitlin Clark against Angel Reese because I know that's a hot topic. And my point is just they're both rookies, and rookies get treated differently when they come into the league. We see it in the NBA all the time. They're not getting a lot of foul calls. Caitlin Clark's going to the basket, getting hacked, not getting foul calls. This is just what happens when you're going to a more physical league. By the way, Caitlin Clark doesn't even play a physical, really brand of basketball. So players are just taking advantage of that in general. So that's just something that she has to adjust to. I think she will adjust to. But this idea that Caitlin Clark is being singled out is just absolutely ridiculous. And it's basically just all stemming from, and the amazing part to me, Trey, is this is basically just coming from comments under videos and Reddit pages. And this is making its way all the way onto ESPN. Like this is basically just off of some comments because the people that are commenting are not watching these games. Caitlin Clark is not being targeted because one player took a cheap shot. One player doesn't let's just make this part clear. One player taking a cheap shot at Caitlin Clark does not represent the entire league. Please find me the other clips of people taking blatant cheap shots that are not a basketball play or not basketball related. Because I can't find it. I can see some hard fouls for sure, but I can't find it. So that's my first issue. Second issue is everyone is on these networks and they're talking about, well, they need to show appreciation for Caitlin Clark. They need to show appreciation for her, what she's doing for the game, and she's the product. So my question, Trey, and rhetorical or not, how do we want the players to show how grateful they are for Caitlin Clark? What are they supposed to do to show that they're grateful? Because the players that they've asked if they're grateful for her, they are all championing Caitlin Clark and saying how great she is for the game when they ask her. They're not asking all the players. I just saw one of the players from the Aces. Her name's escaping me now, but she was saying, "Hey, nobody's asking me how I feel about Caitlin Clark. No one's asking us. They're just people on social media just saying how we feel about her because they saw a cheap shot." So like that's really my second issue. My last issue, Trey, and this is a little bit deeper. I know you talked about the race thing. I think people that are just new to WNBA are not used to the physicality of the game. And I think there is a conversation that needs to be had with some people are feeling a little uncomfortable with watching women and physicality and how that looks on the court. I'll leave that one up for interpretation, but I think that is a part of it too that makes people feel weird. So those are really my three main complaints for this. You take it in any direction, Trey, but like that's what's really bothering me about this entire conversation because it feels a lot of it feels fabricated.
Well, I have to agree with you on that last part. Just a lot of this just feels fabricated. And to take that a little bit further, I think it's a lot of people that want to make this something that's not, whether or not it's a whole race argument or, maybe they have something against the LGBT community because, a lot of the WNBA players they are LGBT members. So like maybe they just want to attack that community. But it just seems like it's coming from a different angle. It's not really basketball related. So I do have to say that one thing. Now another thing I will admit though, I think what gave this bad optics as well is that Carter was not assessed a flagrant in the actual game. It was a day later. Because had she been assessed a flagrant there during the game, I think it would have looked just a tad bit better. So I will admit that I think that gave it
That's fair.
slightly bad optics.
That's fair. I agree with the flagrant part of it. And here's my actual only problem with the flagrant though, Trey. And I think somebody mentioned this, so this isn't my original idea. They only gave her a flagrant because of all the backlash. Like they only assessed the flagrant the next day because of all the backlash. You know what I mean? After it got reviewed, because why wasn't it? They Trey, when I watched the game, I don't know if you were watching the game at the time. They
No, no, no.
reviewed. So they reviewed the play. It was like right before the end of the quarter, I believe. They reviewed the play and then came back and said it was a common foul. So it's not even like they took the time to review it,
Oh,
said it was
okay.
a common foul, and then the next day rescinded that and says it's a flagrant one. That to me is I'm like, don't just do stuff because of the social media backlash. Continue though. I just wanted to mention that part because I feel like that's important to be known. Like this is affecting everything now at this point.
No, no, no. I'm happy you said it because that's something I didn't know. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's a little bit different. But again, it does look like they just they kowtow into the social media backlash.
Yeah.
But also I want to ask you this. This is not a rhetorical question, but this is a real question. As a competitor, like, are you supposed to just bow down to Caitlin Clark? I know she's done a lot for the game in her short stint being there. I think they've only played 7 games. She's done a lot for the WNBA in that short time. I know they're selling out arenas. They had the most viewers ever watching WNBA games, which I do want to add, the WNBA for the last 3 years, the viewership has been going up. I know Caitlin Clark has, expedited this to phenomenal numbers. But again, the viewership has been going up, so she's not the end all be all. But again, she's done a lot for the game. But again, I think there's people like that want to roll out the red carpet for her and say that, the Fever, they should have been playing easier games just so they could showcase Caitlin Clark's talent to the rest of the world. Do you agree with all this kind of sentiment like that they should be rolling out the red carpet for her? I kind of want to see what your opinion is on it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. So I have two different thoughts on that. So the first part is everyone's telling me the problem. Everyone's telling me the problem, and they're not appreciating Caitlin Clark enough. I will say it again. What do you want the players to do to show how grateful they are to Caitlin Clark? Everyone's telling me problems. Bring me the solution. How should they be playing? Tell me how they should play. Tell me how they should operate on the court, off the court. Because the only thing I have seen is players competing. One player go over the line, go too far, and when they ask actual players, including her quote unquote rival Angel Reese, how they feel about her, they all give her credit about what she's done for the game. So I'm just missing how they're not showing they're grateful enough. So like what more are they supposed to be doing in terms of the players playing? Like would you just want them to just let her score? You just want them to just let her kind of go get buckets, shoot from 35 feet out for the fans, or are they supposed to compete? Because I feel like that would be watering down the game as well too. So that's one part of it. Second part for me, and when what you specifically asked in terms of what the league should do, I I'm on the side of they should have not been playing those great teams to start the year back to back to back. Have been consistent about that. I think that was absolutely. I don't know what the strategy was behind that, but outside of the fact of you want the teams to see the best, you want people to also see the best teams in the league while they have the eyeballs. So you want them to see the Aces with Asia Wilson. You want them to see the Liberty with Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. The Connecticut Sun don't really have a marquee player that people would know. I mean, DeWanna Bonner, Alyssa Thomas are great, but they're one of the best teams in the league. The problem with that is she's still a rookie on a team that's the least talented team in the league besides maybe the Mystics. So you're basically setting her up for failure. Now, I don't think they knew she was going to have 10 turnovers the first game or anything like that. I just think they should have split up the games. And mind you, Trey, remember, you probably heard the same stat I did. They played the most games of anyone in the league. They played like 11 games in like 20 something days, right? So they were obviously trying to like have her play as much as possible. That's fine if you want her game one to play the Liberty or the Aces or whatever, fine. But let her play the Mystics or the Sparks or one of these teams in between that time and then play Connecticut. Because for people that haven't been watching the WNBA for the past couple years, and you know me, I have actually been watching WNBA. So this is why some of this conversation is weird to me because I've actually been watching some of this. The Connecticut Sun is basically like a team that's almost devoid of a true superstar, and they're basically feel like the Miami Heat, Trey. They're like physical, they're tough, they're trying to beat you up. That is not the team that Caitlin Clark should be having to play back to back to start her NBA career. Not is it like they should have known that going into it. Like that's not the squad for that. So to answer that second part of your question, I think they could have reworked the schedule a little differently because I don't think the steam has gone completely away. If anything, Trey, and I guess I want to ask you this. We were talking about if the steam was dying down if she doesn't play as well, but this might have picked up the steam because we're having this conversation because people want to see how it's going to be officiated going forward. So maybe I'll ask you that on that end. But yeah, I think they could have done some different things with the schedule for sure.
Yeah, I don't just to piggyback off of that last comment you made. I don't think the steam's dying down. I think this is just kind of energized everything that was going on. And I think you would see more people. I think she plays again on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah,
I
I think.
expect to see,
Yep.
yeah, okay, Friday, yeah. I expect us to see huge numbers from that game just because everybody's going to be watching, just because I almost thought the theatrics, they just want to see all of the sideshow discussions and see if she gets pushed down or that sort of thing. They don't even really care about a basketball game. They don't care about the stat sheet. They just want to see how they see her being treated or how they perceive her being treated.
Now, I was going to ask, what would do you think it would still have the same steam if that didn't happen? Because I guess because
Um,
that's a. I mean, not
no,
that I mean people would still watch, but do you know what I mean? Like in the same way.
no, I don't think it would have had that same steam. And the reason I say that is because again, she's playing some really good teams and she's on herself a bad team. And it's not like she was doing what she was doing in college, or she was dropping 30, 40 points and having, long 3-pointers from the half court. Like she hasn't really been doing that in the WNBA yet. So I think that some of the steam just from her basketball abilities and what she's able to do in the court, that might have been dying down. So I don't think this would have had the same steam. But now they brought in this other angle where it's like, oh, how she's been treated compared to other players and everything else that goes along with it. I think that this is just going to re-energize the whole Caitlin Clark movement, and I think you're just going to see more people watching it, for better or worse. You're going to see more. Everything's going to be under a microscope. Every little foul, every technical, because she's been known to get a lot of technicals here recently. Everything's going to be under a microscope. So I think you're going to see a lot more people watching, for better or worse.
And listen, thank you for actually making that point and reminding me of that part too, which is a small segment of this. I hate to break this to people that are not watching these games. Caitlin Clark is not a choir lady out there. She is getting technical fouls. She is talking that talk to her opponents. If you watch the same um, Kennedy Clark uh, clip, excuse me, from before, she was talking to her, talking trash to her the possession before that they were elbowing back and forth, and that's what happened. Unexcusable behavior. But this isn't just some innocent bystander that's just not talking and like she's not just scoring and getting buckets and being quiet. No, she's scoring. She's letting people know about it. She's complaining for foul calls. She's doing the whole thing. So, but people don't want to acknowledge that, Trey. But you and I have seen these games, and we talk about this every night. We send a text every night when Caitlin Clark gets a text. One of us just beats the other person to it. That's just all how this goes. So, like, that is a part of it too. If you can't be you're gonna listen. Caitlin Clark's the face of the league. That's gonna come with some jealousy. Can we go back to the NBA, Trey? LeBron's own teammates were hating on him, like
Yeah.
legitimately hating on him. This isn't like hating on him. Like LeBron's own teammates were actually hating on him. LeBron got cheap shotted. Kobe got cheap shotted. Like fouls happen. These are welcome to the NBA moments. When you are a highly touted prospect, there is going to be an element of like, man, let me see what she about, right? Like just as a competitive nature, even if you are bringing attention to the game. The only people that I can equate to this level of stardom, um, before they even got to the league. I mean, there's a bunch of people, but like the two that comes to mind in recent memory is LeBron, and then people don't watch hockey, but Sidney Crosby was like this too, Trey, where like he was like LeBron. Since high school, he's the guy, and yeah, he got hit, but people were appreciative of him and what he did for the game even at the time. But that doesn't mean they're not going to compete. So I don't know why we're acting like this is any different. And it feels like the only people that are acting like this is different are the people that were Caitlin Clark fans and Iowa basketball fans or whoever that was on that side of that. And also the people that are not watching the games and they're just watching House of Highlights and they're just seeing one foul and they're not watching the entire game. Because I see Caitlin Clark. I've seen maybe one of her texts be on House of Highlights. I don't see anything else there. So how would these people even know what's going on if they're not seeing that? You know what I mean?
And to be quite honest with you, it doesn't even seem like Caitlin Clark's making a big deal of these incidents. And I put these
Yeah,
incidents,
yeah, she wouldn't. Yeah, because she's talking crazy too.
yeah, like she's not making a big deal. And I really say incidents loosely in air quotes. Like she's just taking it in stride. I'm pretty sure like this has happened to her in high school, in college. Like Caitlin Clark again, she talks a lot of crap. Now, granted, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You and I, we play basketball long enough. We play sports in general long enough. Like it happens. Cool that you talk crap. And she's able to back it up for the most part. But when you talk crap, there's also the consequence that you might get pushed down. Somebody else might talk crap to you. You might start a fight on a worse day. Like things can happen. So like I think that we should all kind of treat it like Caitlin Clark. She's just taking it in stride, taking it one day at a time, trying to be better in the basketball court. That's all there is to it. I mean, I honestly don't even think she probably likes all this attention.
Yeah, and she's already. I was seeing a part of their the ESPN Plus, um, I guess the little like docu series they had on her, and she was talking about the attention and how it's it's been tiring, bothersome. But I can't relate to that. None of us can. But I can understand. I can try to empathize with her or sympathize with her, I should say. But the Caitlin Clark thing is just the innocence thing is something that I don't really care for because I feel like people are just painting a picture that is not exactly what's going on. And by the way, in the words of Zebo, bullies get bullied, Trey. You could do all that talking, but sometimes you talk to the wrong person that got a little screw loose, and it's a different story. People talk crazy in the NBA. They don't talk that crazy if it's Draymond. They don't talk that crazy if it's Pat Bev. It's certain guys that people like have to think about. So she just caught the wrong one. That is what it is. And I'm not saying Caitlin Clark's talking the most trash in the NBA in the WNBA, but it doesn't mean she's not talking at all. And it's very clear that that's what's happening. So I mean, yeah, listen, I don't know. I hope people watch the games. Like that's the ultimate thing that I hope we get from this. Um, but I just think it's a little lazy, and I just encourage people to actually watch these games because, first of all, I don't want to take away from the fact that these are also good basketball games, right? Like you and I have talked about this trade. The games are actually good. We're excited about this league. We're excited about some of the other stars. I mean, before we got into this podcast, we just spent 20 minutes talking about the Sparks and Cameron Brink and Raquel Jackson and Chicago Sky. Like, what I mean? We're talking about all these other squads. So I'm happy this is happening for the league if we have to get this conversation. But I don't want to sit here and act like Caitlin Clark is just some innocent victim and like something is happening to her that is illegal or something that's happening to her that has not happened to Candace Parker and Lisa Leslie and even Cameron Brinks and Angel Reese, and like this is happening to all these rookies. So Caitlin Clark isn't any different from this, outside of the fact that she's just more popular than them.
Totally agree. Like this is just rookie treatment. Now you could say, well, rookies shouldn't be treated like this, fine, whatever. I even let you live with the argument. But again, like you said, in any league, men or women, this is how the rookies get treated. It just is what it is. It's how it's always been, and it's probably how it always will be.
Listen, let's just pivot really quick because speaking of rookies being treated badly, can you just listen? I talked about the Chicago Sky, and I'm high on them. You picked the Seattle Storm. They're 5-3. Can you just explain to me why they're not playing my girl Nika Mule? I just want to know if you know something up there that I don't know. We saw the viral clip of her teammate don't want her to touch her leg. What is going on? Like like I have no idea what's going on over there.
I honestly like I don't have the slightest idea what's going on. It's kind of perplexing to be quite honest with you.
And
But
yeah, she was a
oh, go
second round
ahead.
pick, so I don't want to make it a big deal. But yeah,
I was gonna say when you're 5-3 though, like it's not like you're 0-8. Like you can't make too much of a big deal of it. You know what I mean? But it's still kind of perplexing. It's just like, is she not going to get any kind of tick? Like, how do you expect her to get better if she doesn't get any kind of tick? It's a little bit different. Like, it's one of those things I would say this too. In the NBA, even if they were a second round pick, like they would get at least a little bit of ticket early in the season, just so you can see what you have. You know what I mean?
well, she didn't even get in some of the games at the end trade with with some of the blowouts, so that was weird to me too. And at first it was like early in the year, I'm like, well, maybe she's got to get into shape, but she was with them all training camp. It's just the visa thing had happened, so it's not like maybe she's had some injury I don't know about. My second thing is I'm gonna be real, Trey. The WNBA, we talk about Nika Mule right now, a second round pick in the WNBA, and we know her name, and she's being posted on House of Highlights on ESPN as one of the. She is posted as much as the Cameron Brinks and maybe not Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, but the Cameron Brinks and some of these other girls. So I'm like, you didn't even want to throw her in the game when they was playing Caitlin Clark just for some viewership. Because how upset I was. I tuned in to try to stream that game, and she didn't even play. And I'm like, well, what are we doing here? Like, and I'm gonna just say this part because you gonna laugh. Rest in peace to the great David Stern. But let for those who don't know, David Stern, former commissioner of the NBA, and he's famous for laying down the law and making some things happen. I'm not a biggest fan of collusion, and I know coaches got to coach and do their thing. But let me promise you one thing. If David Stern was running this WNBA, I promise you that Seattle coach would have been got a call, Trey. I would have been like, listen, I don't know what you got going on, but that girl better be in the next game. All right? Like that girl
And
better
the
be
thing
in the
is,
next
you're
game.
joking, but that's 100% what he would have did.
100%. And I'm not the person for like, actually, I was just talking about this the other day. I'm not actually the person that's like fully against like rigging some things. Like 95% of the time, let things happen. But I'm okay with certain rigging. Remember, I talked about Wimby. I told you I ain't want Wimby to go to Charlotte. I said, hey, listen, if you got to rig the ball, you got to rig the ball. Let me tell you, next year, Paige Beckers, just rig it. Make sure she don't be on the same team as like if the Indiana Fever are bad. Her, Caitlin, I don't want them to see them in the same backcourt. Like we need to spread the talent out in the league. You got to rig that one. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to rig some things. All right, you got to make some things happen. Like like I said, if David Stern was out here, Nika Mule would have been playing in some basketball games. I can tell you that for sure. Now, I ain't going to tell
But
you she would have played 30 minutes, but she'd have got in some games for sure, especially the game against Caitlin Clark. Oh, she's getting in the game.
but listen, the thing is, maybe this is just how. Like I know you and I we watched WNBA at least the last couple of years, but like still we weren't able to watch it with a fine tooth comb like we are now, just because of how many games are on TV and how many games are being replayed and rebroadcast and the clips are all on social media and whatnot. Maybe the WNBA was always like this with their rookie treatment, and it just became obvious to us. Like we just not learning this. Like
That's a
maybe
fair
this
point.
was always this, yeah, maybe this was always the subculture of the WNBA. And if it was, maybe it's a good thing. People are seeing it, so things can change. Because I'm just gonna say this example before we get off this pod. The rookies in the NBA used to get treated terribly. I'm talking about just terribly. Like you can go read some anecdotal stories about how bad they got treated. But then, at least with the Lakers, Jerry West, when they drafted Kobe Bryant, he said, "Hey, we're gonna stop this. You're not gonna treat him like this." I know Kenyon Martin said he had to lay down the law in his first year, and then after that, his team was like, "Okay, we're not gonna treat rookies like this anymore." Maybe the WNBA is just airing for a reckoning, like, "Hey, I know this is how things used to go, and this is how we used to treat rookies, but it's time that we change it." That just might be what's happening.
You're right. We weren't paying as close attention as we are now. My only question would be, that's all good and fine, but why would we change it? Because it's not like we're going to be losing viewers because we're more physical. We just talked about, if anything, people are going to watch it more because they're going to want to see if it's continuing. Maybe they're going to want to see if Caitlin Clark fights back or says something back or anything like that. So I don't think it's. I guess my other question from before was, again, and this is the theme of this podcast. I just have a bunch of questions and we don't really have answers to this. Is this negatively affecting like the WNBA's pockets with like this physicality in the game? Because people are talking about it's affecting the product and all this stuff. What's where's the numbers? I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm literally not saying that they don't exist. I just want to see them because like I don't
I
know
would
what the numbers are.
I would say that it's not negatively affecting them right now. But let's say Caitlin Clark was to continue and get fouled, and people started to get outraged, and you had a social media, outcry. That could become bad publicity. And I mean, I know there's the old saying that all publicity is good publicity, but after a while, too much bad publicity just becomes a bad thing. And I don't think the WNBA wants to deal with that either. I mean, listen, this is their time to shine. This is their day in the sun, and they want to market and show their product to be the best that it could possibly be. And if you're showing that your star rookies are getting pushed down, yeah, a lot of people are watching it and they're still watching it and that's still galvanizing some new topics. But at the end of the day, that can't sustain itself. That can't sustain the league. And that's just not a good look going forward. So like there is limits to it. You know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's definitely something we're going to be keeping track of. I mean, the WNBA season, we're gonna have all summer. Once this finals, wraps up, we gonna be able to watch it even in more detail, even between these games. But as we going right now, we hopped on this pod because we waiting on Dallas and Boston. This probably should have been Game 6 or Game 7 in Minnesota right now, right? So we might have not even been on this conversation for real. So it's actually maybe a blessing in disguise. We are talking about it and bringing it to a platform. So that's cool too. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us once again. Again, check us out: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. We have a lot of content coming for you guys. Hopefully, you enjoyed this. We like doing some different topics for you guys. every once in a while. And on the way out, of course, I will swing it to Trey.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. And until next time, peace.